Morning everyone. Today we are having a little bit of a different video. So on Instagram I asked you what kind of book video you'd be interested in, and the majority said books that shaped your life in your 30s. So I have my top seven books, and part of them are here of the books that really had a big impact on my 30s. On place number 7, we have, you probably know that one, Atomic Habits. One of these books that I like to read in January to refresh how to build habits and break old ones. Probably my key takeaway from this book is to make habits as easy as possible. The book gives good examples. It's called pre-commitment or something like that. So whenever I'm planning to go for a run in the morning, I put my running clothes directly next to my bed. Another thing that really changed how I perceive habits is instead of creating a goal, for example, I want to read 100 books this year, to shift my focus to I want to be someone who reads a lot. And then I would think, okay, if I'm that person, what do I do? Oh, I probably would have a reading routine, like a reading hour. I probably would try not to leave the house without a book, and so on and so on. We have the psychology of money. Just to give you a little bit of a flavor of what this book is about, money's greatest intrinsic value, and this can't be overstated, is its ability to give you control over your time. For example, 6 months emergency expenses means not being terrified of your boss because you know you won't be ruined if you have to take some time off to find a new job. I know it's simple, but just have it written down like this, it really clicked in my head. So whenever I'm thinking about buying, for example, a new Cézanne piece, like, okay, this 150 quid could also go into my emergency pot, and would I value it more there because it gives me peace of mind. And this book is full of nice anecdotes. There are not a lot of studies, so it's more anecdote based, but very powerful, and also a book that I've read more than once already. So the next book on my list I talked about that book so much. So all of my friends and Alistair, they know that I love that book because I simply cannot shut up talking about it. And that's Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. For me, that book meant that I'm almost religiously trying to have 8 or 9 hours of sleep every night. For example, it says, routinely sleeping less than 6 or 7 hours a night demolishes your immune system and more than doubling your risk of cancer. Hold on, what? It's not only that disease, it's almost everything. It's diabetes, dementia, it's obesity. And in the book, at the end, there's a lovely little chapter about sleep hygiene. So yeah, basically having something to read before bed is the best, lowering the temperature in your room, all of these things. Yeah, I can get really nerdy about that topic, but I better move on to the next. Alright, I know I said that was a big one, but way bigger impact had this book here, Attached. So I read this book when I just came out of a very toxic relationship, and I had no idea what was actually happening back then. I also was in therapy, and weirdly enough, they didn't point these things out that I've learned in this book. So the book is about different attachment style types. So there is this anxious attachment style type, secure attached, and the avoidant. I used to be anxiously attached, so needing a lot of reassurance, that I'm loved, that everything is okay. Strangely, anxious people are drawn towards avoidant. So these are the people that strive for independence. They don't want clingy people, but somehow, and the book explains why, these people end up together in a trap. And it's super hard to get out of this, and this dynamic ends up being very toxic. And it explained to me why I wasn't drawn towards secure people. And here's a quote I'd like to read. You start to equate the anxiety, the preoccupation, the obsession, and those ever so short bursts of joy with love. What you're really doing is equating an activated attachment system with passion. Do you know that feeling? Maybe as a teenager you have this big crush on someone, and then he doesn't text you back, and then days later it's like, oh my god, I got a new message. This is an activated attachment system, but that's not passion, and that's definitely not love. So this is now regarding securely attached people. Now, I don't have to beat around the bush or play hard to get. Ambiguous messages are out of the mix, as are tension and suspense. As a result, your attachment system remains relatively calm. Because you're used to equating an activated attachment system with love, you conclude that this can't be the one because no bells are ringing off. Wow! I know it might sound silly to some people and absolutely normal, but for me this was an aha moment. And I'm so happy I read that straight before I went into dating Alistair. Because Alistair is a very securely attached person. Yeah, the book probably contributed to me being married to Alistair. So that is a huge one for my 30s. Moving on to stolen focus. The truth is, you're living in a system that is pouring acid on your attention every day. And then you're being told to blame yourself and fiddle with your own habits while the world's attention burns. It's so easy to put the blame on yourself. You read Atomic Habits and you're like, why am I still on my phone 2 hours or 3 hours a day? And the book does not only talk about how the world is burning, but also gives you some good examples of what you could do. In one chapter, the book is talking about, instead of focusing on what not to do, find something where you enter a flow state. It's scientifically proven that the more time you are in a flow state, the happier you are. For me, it's, for example, playing piano or baking or reading a really good book where I just get into the zone. But again, this is not something that I've mastered. It's probably worth reading once a year. The next book on my list, unfortunately, I don't have as a physical book because I listen to it on Audible. But nonetheless, it's a super important book for me because it completely changed how I view myself. So the book is called Sensitive. I thought that I'm just a little bit quirky in some regards, or too sensitive, because usually it's used as something negative. But after reading that completely changed, because now I see being highly sensitive more as a superpower. And also a lot of things made sense now. There are so many little aspects that I thought are just random quirks of mine, but they actually all fall under the umbrella of being a highly sensitive person. For example, I can, when I go into the office, I can already smell in the elevator, in the lift, whether a certain person is in the office or not, because their perfume lingers on. Or I can get really drained after social interactions, especially if that person is angry, because I'm soaking off that negative mood so much and have trouble, or I'm struggling to regulate my own emotions and just not to care. I really hope that one day we will be able to say, I'm a highly sensitive person, in the same way that we say nowadays, I'm an introvert. And I hope that this book will help change that perspective and the awareness in our culture. One day, one day. Moving on to the last book. Okay, so this book made me very angry. And I talked about it to my girlfriends and they read it too, and we're all together quite in shock still. So, the book in question is called This Is Your Brain on Birth Control: The Surprising Signs of Women, Hormones, and the Law of Unintended Consequences. Whew! I'm not saying that the birth control is bad, and also the author doesn't say it like that. It's more about the lack of information that we get when we're put on birth control, usually in our teenage years. And there is such a huge gap in hard facts and studies. It's infuriating if you think about how little the science actually knows about the effects of birth control and also the long-term effects, but it's still just being given away like candy. So one of the things that really surprised me were, for example, that the birth control changes how you smell, the size of your hippocampus, it shrinks, your sex drive, your stress level, your ability to learn, the way you deal with stress, but what kind of men you find attractive. Say what? So, let's say you you find your husband, you meet your husband when you're on birth control, and then you take off the birth control a few years later because you want to get pregnant. There are women who do not find their husband attractive anymore because they're now drawn towards the very, I would say, testosterone features in a man. So the chiseled chin and broad shoulders and all of that kind of stuff. Excuse me. Because now their real hormones are kicking in. Sorry, I cannot explain it as nice as in the book. But that topic really got me. And I got off my birth control after reading this book, and I was a tiny bit concerned because I was already with Alistair. But everything went alright, and I still find Alistair as attractive as on the first day, so I'm really relieved. Just as a side note, I know it's hard not to be on birth control if you're not planning to get pregnant anytime soon. So what I did back then, it was probably 2 years ago, I started using the app Natural Cycles, and that video is not sponsored in any ways. I just really like that app. So for example, it's saying today I'm not fertile. I know that's not as accurate probably as the hormonal birth control, but for me personally in the stage of life that I am right now, that works. This book definitely changed and shaped my life in my 30s. I would love to know from you, do you have maybe 1, 2 or 3 books that you know that shaped your life? Also, please let me know in the comments whether you would like to see more of this kind of content, so this sit-down book talk, or whether you prefer Life in My 30s. And the next video will be again a Life in My 30s episode. Thank you so much for watching and see you next time.